What if I told you there's a car out there right now that's been driving for over 4,000 kilometers without charging even once? Not a hybrid, not solar-powered, just an electric vehicle that somehow keeps going and going like it's feeding off thin air. Sounds absolutely insane, right? Well, buckle up because what we're about to share with you is going to flip everything you thought you knew about electric cars completely upside down. 2 weeks back, we heard a claim so wild that most people would have laughed it off immediately. Someone built an electric car that never needs a plug-in. No charging stations. No waiting around for hours. No range anxiety whatsoever. Just endless driving. Naturally, we were skeptical as hell. These kinds of stories usually come from basement inventors on obscure internet forums, right? But this time was different. This came from someone who'd actually built working prototypes before. So we thought, okay, let's put this to the ultimate test. Let's see if this thing is legit or just another overhyped scam. We're talking about a vehicle created by this brilliant but controversial inventor from Zimbabwe. The guy's name has been circulating in tech circle for years, usually followed by equal parts amazement and doubt. His claim? That he's figured out how to harvest energy from radio frequencies and electromagnetic fields in the air around us, converting it back into usable power for the vehicle. Essentially, the car powers itself. Forever. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds like perpetual motion, and perpetual motion is impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what we set out to investigate. Here's what we did. We didn't just take this car for a casual spin around the block. Oh no, we mapped out a brutal 1,000-kilometer journey that would push this vehicle to its absolute limits. City traffic with constant stop and go. Highway speeds that drain batteries fast. Mountain roads with steep climbs that demand serious torque. If this car was going to fail, we'd make sure it happened on camera. We brought in independent observers, installed GPS tracking that couldn't be tampered with, and set up diagnostic equipment to monitor every single data point. Battery levels, temperature, power consumption, regeneration rates, everything. This wasn't going to be some edited hype video. We live-streamed the entire thing. And we brought along a backup vehicle too. Same model, same weight, but without the special technology. This would be our control. While one car claimed it could run forever, the other would show us what a normal EV does under identical conditions. Fair comparison. No tricks. Just raw data. Day one started in the heart of the city. Traffic was absolutely brutal. Stop signs every 50 meters. Red lights that seemed coordinated just to annoy us. We loaded the car with 4 people plus all our camera gear, making it nice and heavy. The control vehicle was right behind us, matching every move. Within the first 20 minutes of city driving, something weird caught our attention. The battery indicator on our test car wasn't moving at all. Not even a little bit. Now, any normal electric car would have dropped at least a few percentage points by now. City driving is a battery killer. But this one, completely steady. 20 kilometers in, still no change. We kept checking, kept watching. 30 kilometers, same story. The needle didn't budge. At this point, we started wondering if the display was broken. Maybe it was frozen or something. So we pulled over and ran a full diagnostic check. The external audit team came in with their equipment, scanning everything. They confirmed the battery hadn't been secretly charged and the display was working perfectly. The car genuinely wasn't losing power. We looked at each other like, okay, this is getting interesting. Phase 2 took us onto the highway. This is where things get real for electric vehicles. High speeds mean high energy consumption. We merged onto the freeway and locked in cruise control at 110 kilometers per hour. Hour after hour, we just kept rolling. The miles clicked by. The control car behind us started showing battery drain, exactly as expected. Meanwhile, our test vehicle, still sitting pretty at full charge. 4 hours passed. We'd now covered serious distance at highway speeds, and the battery indicator still hadn't dropped. At 400 kilometers, disbelief started setting in hard. This shouldn't be possible. Physics doesn't work this way. We cranked up the air conditioning full blast. We turned on every infotainment system. We plugged in our phones to charge them. We were actively trying to drain this battery, and it just wouldn't cooperate. The car glided down the highway like it had unlimited juice. The control vehicle had to pull off and recharge. We kept going. We finally stopped for a detailed diagnostic check. The team pulled up all the data. Battery level, still at 99%. Thermal readings, completely stable. Power draw, average. And here's where it got absolutely mind-blowing. The power regeneration numbers were off the charts. The system wasn't just maintaining its charge. It was actively generating more energy than it was using. We stood there staring at these readings, and nobody could explain it. Even the observers who came in as neutral parties started asking how this could possibly be happening. All right, we thought, time to really push this thing. We left the smooth highway and headed into mountain territory. Steep inclines that would make any vehicle work hard. The kind of roads where you can feel the engine strain. Or in this case, where you'd expect the electric motors to struggle. But this car? It climbed like it was on flat ground. No overheating warnings. No stuttering. No power drops whatsoever. We even switched into sport mode just to see what would happen. The car responded instantly, and still, the battery didn't budge. It was like watching something that was intentionally mocking the laws of physics. As night fell, we decided to get ridiculous with it. Full headlights, heated seats, navigation system, every single electrical load we could think of. The battery still read 99%. At this point, we made a crazy decision. We weren't going to stop. This would become a 24-hour endurance test. We rotated drivers, stocked up on snacks and water, and just kept the wheels rolling. We wanted to see exactly how far this thing could go. 3 a.m. rolled around, and our camera crew was absolutely exhausted. The car? Fresh as ever. By 5 a.m., the sun started creeping over the horizon, illuminating a vehicle that had been running continuously for over 20 hours without a single charge. The control vehicle had given up hours ago, requiring multiple recharge stops and throwing range warnings left and right. But our test car just kept humming along. We passed 900 kilometers, then 1,000. At this point, even the skeptical observers were starting to believe. The energy graphs they were monitoring showed something completely unheard of: positive recharge patterns. The car wasn't just conserving battery. It was somehow creating more power than it started with. We pulled over and popped the hood to take a look. The internal coils were warm but not dangerously hot. There was a subtle humming sound, almost musical. The radio frequency receiver panel had this faint glow to it. Every diagnostic tool confirmed what we were seeing. Energy was flowing from antennas to magnetic converters to the battery in a continuous loop. No hidden cables. No secret switches. No magic tricks. Just this impossibly efficient system doing what it was designed to do. We opened up the interior compartment to see the heart of the technology. Copper coils wrapped in intricate patterns. Layers of graphene. Magnet-based turbines that formed the core power unit. The observers started calling it the heartbeat of the vehicle, and honestly, that's exactly what it looked like. A living, breathing energy system. Here's where things got even crazier. We decided to extend the journey. Why stop at 1,000 kilometers? We looped back through the city, drove through desert terrain, pushed through a rainstorm. Temperature swings that would normally affect vehicle performance did absolutely nothing to this car. The tires were wearing down from all the driving. The passengers were exhausted, but the battery still locked at 99%. Towns we drove through started gathering crowds. People had never seen anything like this. A vehicle with no exhaust fumes, barely any noise, and definitely no charging cable. We showed them the odometer, 1,300 kilometers and counting. The live stream had thousands watching in real time, commenting in disbelief. We finally circled back to where we started, completing this insane journey, and the car rolled in looking like it had just been turned on for the first time. Battery still at 99%. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, that's cool, but there's got to be a catch, right? That's exactly what we thought too. So we didn't stop there. After this first test went viral and people started really paying attention, we decided to take things to the next level. No more city loops. This time, we planned a full expedition into some of the harshest environments we could find. Wetlands, salt flats, freezing highlands. We needed to find a breaking point if one existed. And to make absolutely sure there was no funny business going on, we brought in a forensic audit team. These weren't enthusiasts or fans. These were professionals whose entire job was to debunk this miracle. They came loaded with energy analyzers, signal spectrum readers, thermal imaging cameras, and radio frequency disruptors. Their mission? Prove this was all smoke and mirrors. We kicked off the second leg of testing in scorching desert heat, over 40 degrees Celsius with no shade anywhere. The air conditioning was blasting constantly. Dust was getting into every intake. The tires were softening from the heat. Any normal vehicle would be screaming for mercy. But this car just kept rolling like it was a pleasant spring day. We ran infrared scans of all the internal components. Nothing was overheating. The coils were operating within normal temperature ranges. The electromagnetic converters showed consistent patterns. Here's where we got really scientific. We deployed a radio frequency disruptor to see if blocking ambient electromagnetic waves would affect the system. And you know what? There was a slight dip in the recharge rate, which actually proved the technology was doing what it claimed to do. It was harvesting energy from the surrounding electromagnetic fields. But even with disruption, the battery never dropped below 98%. The audit team was genuinely baffled. One of them asked if there might be hidden supercapacitors somewhere. So we started disassembling panels right there. Nothing hidden. Every component was exactly as described. No secrets. We press on into salt flats, bright reflective surfaces that typically strain batteries. Zero issues. The driver reported the steering was tight, acceleration was responsive, and the regenerative braking was actually feeding even more power back into the system with every stop. Then came the real challenge. We started climbing into highlands over 3,000 meters in elevation. Thinner air, colder temperatures, conditions that usually reduce engine power dramatically. But this wasn't a traditional engine. It was this magnetic symphony that somehow adjusted its own frequency in real time to maintain efficiency. We watched it happen on our monitors. The system was adapting on its own without any manual adjustments. By day 3 of this expedition, we'd passed 2,100 kilometers. Battery still at 99%. And then something happened that perfectly illustrated the difference between this car and conventional EVs. Remember that control vehicle we brought along with freshly charged batteries? It completely broke down. Overheated inverter, failed battery cell. It was done. Meanwhile, our test vehicle silently drove past it without breaking a sweat. The forensic team called for a complete takedown. They wanted to examine every single component. We agreed because we had nothing to hide. With the car parked at a neutral location, we began taking it apart piece by piece. Each component was catalogued, photographed, and analyzed. No missing parts. No hidden fuel cells. No backup batteries tucked away somewhere. Just the same configuration we'd been looking at from the start. Copper coils, radio frequency receiver plates, graphene-layered converters, all pulling energy from electromagnetic fields in the environment. The team ran energy balance calculations. Energy input was consistently greater than energy output. Anomaly after anomaly appeared in their data. One auditor called it the most advanced energy trickery he'd ever encountered, then paused and admitted something that gave us chills. He said, "If this is trickery, it's beyond anything I've seen in 30 years of doing this work." They ran independent tests, disconnected all systems, rebooted from zero. The recharge pattern resumed immediately every single time. This car wanted to drive, so we let it continue. Next up was extreme weather testing. We drove straight into a scheduled rainstorm with flooded streets and slick terrain. In any normal electric vehicle, the risk of electrical shorting is massive. Water and electricity don't play nice. But this car? It cruised through those conditions like a boat on wheels. No electrical arcing. No system alerts. The water-resistant casing around the magnetic converters proved to be absolutely flawless. That night, lightning storms lit up the sky. Radio frequencies went completely wild, and our tracking equipment had to switch bands just to keep functioning. But the vehicle remained perfectly stable. If anything, it seemed like the car was thriving on all that electromagnetic chaos in the atmosphere. We rolled into a remote village that had probably never seen technology like this. Crowds gathered immediately. Children were pointing at the glowing radio frequency panel, visible through the transparent cover. We let them touch the car. No heat, no electrical shock, just pure fascination. The locals started calling it the Forever Runner, which honestly is a pretty perfect name. We invited the village chief to take a ride. He climbed in, looked around, and asked where the fuel tank was. We told him the fuel is everywhere, all around us, invisible but constant. He sat in silence for a moment, processing that concept, then smiled wider than we'd seen anyone smile in weeks. As dawn broke again, we hit the 3,000-kilometer mark. Battery still showing 99%. At this point, we had over 50 hours of continuous driving footage that had been reviewed live by thousands of people. No editing, no breaks, no suspicious gaps, just uninterrupted proof. Energy monitors continued displaying this positive loop behavior that defied conventional understanding. The world's biggest automotive blog started requesting exclusive interviews. We turned them all down. This wasn't about generating headlines or going viral. This was about proving something fundamental about what's possible. But we wanted to go even further to eliminate any remaining doubt. We stopped the car on an empty stretch of highway, disconnected every single wire, and completely shut down the energy system. Then we waited. 12 full hours of the car sitting there doing absolutely nothing. No movement, no activity, just parked. When we reconnected everything and powered the system back up, something incredible happened. The battery reading jumped from 98% back to 99%. It had recharged itself while sitting idle. No motion, no driving, just the ambient electromagnetic frequencies in the air doing their thing. Now we really wanted to test the limits. We wrapped the car in external Faraday shielding designed to block electromagnetic waves completely. This time, the recharge rate slowed down significantly, which again proved the mechanism was exactly what was claimed. When we removed the shielding, the system bounced right back to full efficiency. At this point, even the hardcore skeptics were running out of arguments. We decided to bring in a government laboratory to conduct official spectrum analysis. They arrived with professional-grade equipment and spent hours running every test imaginable. Every single reading confirmed that the car was harvesting electromagnetic energy within completely legal frequency ranges. No illegal broadcasting. No interference with other vehicles or communications equipment. Just smart, efficient harvesting of ambient energy that's already saturating the air around us constantly. They signed off on everything. The car was declared safe and legitimate. One of their researchers pulled us aside and said something we'll never forget. He called it the defining technological moment of our century, comparable to when the original electric motor was first demonstrated. We ended this absolutely wild journey by driving to the coast. Ocean waves were crashing beside us as we rolled along the shoreline. The odometer read 4,122 kilometers. The battery, still at 99%. Not a single charging cable had touched this vehicle in over 5 days of continuous testing. We finally turned off the engine and sat there in the sudden silence. It felt almost spiritual, like we'd witnessed something that would be talked about for generations. We looked at each other, and there were no more questions to ask. Just this overwhelming sense of wonder mixed with the realization that everything might be about to change. The inventor who built this car has a vision that goes way beyond just vehicles. When we asked him what comes next, he smiled in this knowing way and said something about a sky without fuel. The road has ended, but the journey of energy freedom is just beginning. And honestly, after everything we witnessed, we believe him. Within 48 hours of publishing all this footage, our inboxes completely exploded. Top automotive manufacturers reached out, though most did so anonymously. Universities were demanding access to the full datasets. Skeptics who'd spent weeks arguing in comment sections suddenly switched sides and offered their support. And the major energy companies? Complete radio silence. That silence was more telling than any statement could have been. This wasn't just a successful test anymore. This had become a genuine moment of reckoning for the entire energy industry. We decided to release everything publicly. Every gigabyte of data. Route telemetry, battery analytics, engine heat maps, radio frequency spectrum logs, every single reading timestamped and independently verified. We uploaded it all to a blockchain-verified archive so nobody could claim it had been altered or manipulated. The truth was out there now, permanent and undeniable. The online debates that followed were absolutely insane. Forums exploded with arguments. Was this real perpetual motion or just an ultra-efficient harvesting mechanism? Experts picked sides and went to war in the comments. Some physicists dismissed everything outright without even looking at the data. Others took a more nuanced approach, saying we weren't actually breaking the laws of physics, just playing the game a lot smarter than anyone had before. We organized a live stream panel with 3 renowned professors from different universities. They reviewed all the footage and data in real time with thousands of people watching. One of them paused the video when he saw the battery reading increase while the car sat idle. He leaned back in his chair and said something that gave everyone chills. If this data is accurate, and I have no reason to believe it isn't, we are watching the future arrive ahead of schedule. Then came an interesting challenge. An international electric vehicle alliance offered $10 million if the car could be independently tested in their laboratory facilities. The inventor declined, which surprised a lot of people. But instead of just saying no, he made a counter-offer that was way more interesting. He invited all of them to come to Zimbabwe and see exactly where this technology was born. So naturally, we went along to document everything. The facility was nothing like what any of us expected. This wasn't some massive factory with clean rooms and robotic assembly lines. It was humble to the point of being almost shocking. A dusty garage surrounded by farmland. But when you stepped inside, you immediately felt the presence of something special. Hand-wound copper coils hung from the ceiling. Workbenches were covered in magnetic field charts. Whiteboards filled with equations written in permanent marker because apparently they ran out of dry erase markers months ago and never bothered to buy more. The inventor showed us the very first prototype he'd ever built. It looked like an absolute mess of tangled wires and random components. But when he connected it to a simple desk fan, the fan started spinning. No cord plugged into the wall. No battery pack. Just ambient radio frequency harvesting. He laughed at our expressions and said this was his first real proof that the concept worked. That was years ago, and he'd been refining it ever since. His entire team consisted of just 8 engineers. All of them were local. All of them were self-taught. One of them demonstrated how they calibrated the magnetic coils using tuning forks. Primitive tools delivering elegant results. They'd even built a miniature power grid that was supplying electricity to several nearby homes. Lights, fans, phone chargers, all running on the same principle. Energy pulled straight from electromagnetic fields in the air. We interviewed a local woman whose house was connected to this experimental grid. She told us her electricity bill had dropped to 0. She smiled and said she didn't really understand how it worked, but her grandchildren could study at night now without worrying about costs. That's when the entire story shifted in our minds. This wasn't just about building a cool car anymore. This was about empowering people and completely decentralizing energy access. The inventor walked us through an open field where he plans to scale up production. He pulled out a blueprint on a clipboard showing modular power units. Small radio frequency harvesting cells that could power an entire village. Each unit would be about the size of a microwave oven. You'd plug it in once for the initial setup, never connected to the grid, and power would just flow continuously. We asked him why he hadn't just sold this technology to major corporations who could have made him incredibly wealthy. He looked us dead in the eye and said one word that explained everything. Control. He believed they would lock the technology up, patent it into oblivion, and keep it from the people who needed it most. He calls his vision the Energy Liberation Initiative. The car we tested was never meant to be the end goal. It was just a flagship, the undeniable proof that this concept works at scale. We visited a local school that was already using one of his generators. It powered lights, projectors, and ceiling fans throughout the building. The headmaster showed us attendance records. Student attendance had improved dramatically since the technology was installed. He said something that stuck with us. The kids aren't afraid of the dark anymore. Simple as that. As we were walking back to our vehicles, the inventor suddenly stopped and pointed up at the sky. He said one word. Next. We asked if he meant drones or delivery systems. He shook his head slowly and said something that made our jaws drop. People. He walked us over to a storage container we hadn't noticed before and opened it up. Inside was a 2-seat prototype aircraft with similar radio frequency coils wrapped around its belly. He claimed it had already completed 4 short test flights, all of them self-powered with no conventional fuel source. He pulled out a tablet and showed us grainy footage. The aircraft lifted off the ground, hovered steadily, and returned to land. No loud propeller noise, just this soft humming sound. He hadn't shown this to the world yet because, in his words, they are not ready for it. That's when something clicked for all of us. This inventor wasn't chasing investors or venture capital. He was racing against time. Time to build enough units. Time to decentralize the technology. Time to protect it from being suppressed. Because once this tech spreads far enough, it becomes impossible to stop. You can't put this genie back in the bottle once millions of people have access to it. We left that garage with more footage than we could process in a week. But the moment we started uploading clips, the internet broke again. Millions of views within hours. Mainstream media outlets scrambled to play catch-up. Technology magazines rushed out think pieces and analysis articles. A new term started trending called the revolutionary moment. It referred to that instant when you see something impossible, and your entire worldview shifts permanently. You can't unsee it. You can't go back to believing the old limitations. About a week later, we went back to visit the original test vehicle. It had been sitting in a sealed garage with no human contact. We opened the door, half expecting to find a dead battery after all that time sitting idle. Battery reading, still 99%. We asked if we could take it for one more drive. The inventor nodded with this knowing smile. So we did a final 1,000-kilometer loop, filmed entirely in real time. No editing, no background music, no dramatic effects. Just a car, just a road, just pure unfiltered truth. We ended that final video with a simple direct question to everyone watching. Now, do you believe it? The comment section absolutely lit up. Sure, some people still doubted. Some insisted it had to be staged despite all the evidence. But more and more people started asking the one question that really mattered. Where can we actually get one of these? And the inventor's answer was perfect. Soon, but not through traditional dealerships. Through cooperatives, through communities, through networks of people who own their power source collectively. Not just users, but participants. He wasn't just trying to change the automotive industry. He was attempting to change capitalism itself. We honestly don't know what the next few years are going to bring. We can't predict how the major energy corporations will respond when this technology spreads. Will they embrace it or fight to bury it? But here's what we do know for absolute certain. We drove an electric vehicle that never needed to stop for charging. We saw homes powered by ambient electromagnetic energy. We met children whose futures got brighter without anyone paying an electricity bill. And we saw a prototype aircraft that flew in near silence. The world is fundamentally different now. The question isn't whether this technology works anymore. The question is whether humanity will accept this change or whether powerful interests will fight to suppress it. That test car is still sitting in the garage right now. Battery reading still at 99%. Still waiting. Still ready. And honestly, so are we. The age of paying for energy might be coming to an end. And we got to witness the beginning of that revolution firsthand. If this story opened your eyes to what's possible, hit that like button and subscribe because this is just a start. The technology is real. The data is verified. The future is arriving whether we're ready or not. And we're going to keep documenting every step of this journey. See you in the next one.